On a bright weekday morning, as sunlight pierced through the dusty windows of Rosebridge Elementary, an exhausted single father named Harvey Cole, the school's janitor, bent down to pick up a forgotten lunchbox when he heard the softest rustle behind him like a tiny breath caught between fear and hope. When he looked up, he saw Mira, the school's silent new girl, standing motionless at the doorway, her wide eyes trembling as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. In that fragile instant, Harvey felt something shift in the room, like a quiet plea reaching straight into a heart that had already been broken and stitched back together too many times. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small miracles, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Midnight Reports. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Harvey had taken the janitor job not out of choice but survival. After losing his wife to a sudden illness 2 years earlier, he'd promised his son, little Rowan, that he would always try, no matter how unfair life seemed. His days started before sunrise, pushing heavy cleaning carts through silent hallways, and ended long after dusk when he finally collapsed on their tiny apartment couch. But despite the exhaustion, he carried a quiet kindness inside him, a warmth students often gravitated toward. Except Mira. She never spoke to anyone. Not to teachers, not to classmates. She moved through the day like a shadow, delicate and unseen. Rumor had it that Myra's mother was Verena Halden, one of the most feared corporate executives in the city, cold, commanding, powerful enough to silence entire boardrooms with a single glance. She enrolled her daughter in the school without attending a meeting, speaking to no one, leaving only a stack of forms and a chilling warning that Mira was not to be disturbed unnecessarily. No one dared question it. But Harvey was not no one. The first time he found Mira again was behind the music building, sitting alone on a concrete step, clutching her small backpack like a shield. It was noon, the sun high and warm, casting a soft glow on her tiny face. Harvey had simply walked by, nodding gently as he swept leaves into a dustpan. She watched him with hesitant curiosity, as if trying to understand the strange man who smiled without expecting anything in return. Over the weeks that followed, their silent encounters multiplied. Harvey noticed that Mira lingered near the places he cleaned, the gym doorway, the garden walkway, the art room windowsill. She never spoke, but sometimes her eyes lifted in acknowledgement. Once, when he accidentally dropped a stack of papers, she bent down to help gather them, her fingers trembling yet determined. Harvey thanked her softly, and though she didn't answer, a faint flush warmed her cheeks. One bright afternoon, Harvey found her sitting on the playground steps long after dismissal, her backpack beside her feet, her hands folded tightly in her lap. He realized no one had come to pick her up. Gently, he sat on a nearby bench, giving her space. After a few minutes, Mira quietly walked over and sat beside him. Her small frame leaned toward him, not touching, but close enough to say she trusted him. Harvey sensed something fragile in her, something that could break if handled wrong. So he spoke to her the way he spoke to Rowan when the boy had nightmares he couldn't describe. In calm whispers, Harvey told Mira about colors in the sky, about how even broken things had light inside, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. He never asked her to speak. He only spoke warmth into the silence she lived in. It was during one of those golden afternoons that it happened. Mira had been tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick while Harvey fixed a loose chain on the playground swing. The schoolyard was empty, the daylight softening into its late afternoon gentleness. When Harvey finished, he turned to see Mira staring at him, her eyes reflecting something deeper than curiosity, something like trust fighting fear. He knelt in front of her, not too close, and said, "You don't have to say anything, Mira. But if someday you feel like whispering even one little sound, I'll hear it." Her lips parted, trembling. A breath. A heartbeat. Then, almost too soft for the wind to carry, Mira released the faintest whisper, "Hi." Harvey froze. Not wanting to frighten her, he smiled with tears threatening his eyes and whispered back, "Hi, Mira." What Harvey didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that Myra's mother, Verena Halden, stood just beyond the school gate, hidden behind the shade of a tree, watching everything. She had arrived early for once, an uncharacteristic break in her schedule caused by a meeting that ended abruptly. And she'd witnessed the entire moment, her daughter whispering her very first word in years into the gentle quiet of a janitor's presence. For the first time in a long time, something cracked inside her. Tears streamed down her face, surprising even herself. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth as she realized how deeply her daughter had been hurting, and how blind she had been. Verena approached slowly, her heels clicking against the pavement, each step heavy with guilt and fear. Harvey stood when he saw her, instinctively shielding Mira behind him until she peeked out and tugged his shirt, signaling it was okay. Verena tried to speak but her voice broke. She knelt down in front of Mira, her usual rigid posture collapsing as she whispered, "You spoke?" Mira took her mother's hand, something she hadn't done in months, and nodded. Verena cried harder, cradling her daughter, before looking up at Harvey with a shattered expression. "How did you do it?" she whispered. Harvey shook his head softly. "I didn't do anything. She just needed someone to meet her where she was." Something inside Verena shifted. A woman feared by thousands suddenly felt small before the quiet strength of a single father who had nothing yet gave everything. In the following days, Verena made changes, real ones. She attended school meetings, adjusted her work hours, and spent time with Mira in ways she had long forgotten how. She even stopped Harvey in the hallway one afternoon and thanked him with sincerity so raw it surprised them both. And as for Mira, the whispers grew into short sentences. She still spoke softly, as if testing the world's gentleness, but every word carried hope.